What's going on, everyone? Welcome back into another episode of the Behind the Mic podcast. I am Mike Kadlick, and for the first time in what's almost a year, I think myself and Barth are legally allowed to talk to each other on the so for this next episode, I'm happy and super excited to have my old coworker, podcast host, whatever you want to call him, Alex Barth from 98.5 The Sports Hub, on here to talk about how he got into the industry and his whole background, his story. So, Alex, I know you didn't like to do this on Patriots Beat, but I do it here. How you doing today?
I'm good. Happy to be here. Happy to be doing this. I appreciate you having me on. And yeah, this will be a lot of fun. It's nice to be talking to you through a computer again instead of in person.
I was gonna say it's the same exact thing, same software, similar background to Patriots Beat. It's like riding a bike. But so what we do, or how I like to start these, is a segment called Resume Time, which is basically just from start to finish, as if you were sort of reading your resume, how you got to, I guess, your start in the industry, where you are now. Like, what's your kind of story and how you ultimately got to doing digital content for 98.5.
Yeah, I mean, how far back do you want me to start? I guess because I've been doing this stuff pretty regularly since high school.
I want to hear all of it, like from
so,
I guess your love for it to where it came from and how you actually got your foot in the door.
I mean, I've always been a sports fan. I wasn't exactly under the illusion that I was ever going to play professionally, but I got cut from the freshman baseball team in high school. I was the only one who was cut, and the coach kind of pulled me into his office and he apologized for that. And he was like, they need somebody to call the games on local access. Okay. So I'm sitting there thinking, whatever, I'll just go on there, make fun of my friends. It'll be a goofy thing to do because a bunch of my friends are on the team. And it turned out I was decent at it. And then the next year I started doing football for my high school and basketball and on and on. And I was like, my school had a TV media class. So I started doing that. I enjoyed that. And I was like, oh, this is like something I like doing. I started doing this after school program with a guy named Jimmy Young, who was an anchor on NECN for years. And I was like, oh, I enjoy this. I feel like I have a knack for it. Mm-hmm. I wasn't one of these people that had like these aspirations for some sort of career before that. And I was like, I can do this and maybe make a job out of it. So I went to Ithaca College, was there, did a ton of stuff there, TV and radio, interned for ESPN Radio, Ithaca. I did a year as the voice of the Harwich Mariners in the Cape Cod Baseball League. I interned at NBC Sports Boston, then Comcast Sportsnet for the Felger and Maz show. That was my first real exposure to the Sports Hub.
You interned with them? I didn't even know that.
So I interned on the TV side, but yeah.
Okay.
So I did that, got out of school, got a job as an editor at NBC Sports Boston, started doing freelance play-by-play because initially I wanted to do play-by-play. I was working for like up to 12 schools at one point, just, freelancing that, doing the editing at NBC Sports Boston. I worked for the startup company called Snap Call Sports, which was, some people might remember this. It had a little bit of a following. So like you'd be on the app during, you're watching like the Bruins or the Celtics or whatever big game, and there'd be like questions you could answer with like other people, and you get points based on how you answered either predictions or trivia. And I was the one running it, doing the questions. That company no longer exists. Now you see everybody using that technology, so they missed out. But I did that. I was doing a podcast for them. I was doing some other podcast editing, not even sports related. I think that's so. And then I started doing stuff through that. So when Snap Call ended, CLNS picked up my podcast. I went there. I was doing Red Sox podcasting for them. While I'm still doing play-by-play, editing at NBC Sports Boston, working with these other podcasts. And then, so CLNS started doing Red Sox stuff for them, some Celtics stuff. And then the head of the Patriots Eagles Super Bowl, they asked me if I wanted to run their coverage for the game that week. I did. They liked it enough that when they got credentialed the next year, I was one of the 2 credentialed reporters. They added Evan Lazar. Mm-hmm. So I'm covering the Patriots 3-4 days a week. Mm-hmm. I'm doing all this play-by-play. Like I would leave Gillette and drive up to Lowell. Oh, I forgot. I also worked at UMass Lowell as an SID full-time for 4 months. Hated it.
Yeah, that's right. I remember those. Yeah.
That was before I did that for 4 months. And then I got into the whole, it's been a ride. But I was still doing play-by-play for them. SID work, like when I say hated it, SID work, not for the faint of heart. Like it is so demanding. And you need to truly love it. And it's not truly what I wanted to do. So it just, I kind of realized that, started doing this other stuff. But I'd leave Gillette, I'd go up to Lowell, I'd go down to Dartmouth, I'd go out to Worcester. I was the voice of MIT football for 2 seasons. UMass Boston, I called a ton of games there. They do an awesome job with their broadcast while I'm covering the Patriots, while I'm doing this other side podcast, while I'm working at NBC Sports Boston. And it
When did
all
you
just
sleep?
what's up?
When did you sleep?
No, I remember when CLNS kind of floated the Patriots thing to me, I was like, this is what I've always wanted to do.
Mhm.
And they said, maybe it could turn full time either with them or like if I could get, I could use the exposure to get a job somewhere else.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking about it and being like, this is an unbelievable opportunity. Like it's a ton, but if I can just do this for 6 months, it'll pay off.
Yeah.
And I did it for 2.5 years.
Mhm.
And I was thinking like 6 months max. So I'm doing all that simultaneously, 2018, 2019. At the end of the 2019 season, I was like, this is getting tough.
Yeah.
And then, and this whole time, I was on the street team at the Sports Hub. That's another job I had. It's a long resume.
Yeah.
So it all came together between the connections I made on the street team, having established my brand, having covered the Patriots. I use Snap Call in my podcast to get to know some of the on-air people, having them on as guests.
Mhm.
Even through NBC Sports Boston, I made some connections that were helpful. And it all just sort of came together that there was this opening for a writer at the Sports Hub. And literally every single thing I was doing contributed to me being the person for that job, even though
Mhm.
I wasn't writing. And they hired me, and I got super lucky because 2 months later was the pandemic, and doing what I was doing, I don't think I would have made it through the pandemic doing sports media. That probably would have been it for me.
Sure.
So I think I got all my jobs. I think that's all of them. But yeah, it was when people say like, oh, what's the path you should be on to work in sports media? I always tell them like there is no path. There is no one, this is right, this is wrong. It's just being in the right place at the right time. And I like to joke that I was in so many places. One of them had to be the right one eventually.
Yeah. It's funny too, because who I've talked to so far, like all the stories are so different. And you're right. Like it's not just, people think that there's a cookie cutter way to do this. And, people trying to get themselves or get foot in the door. It's like, how did you do it? It's like, I can tell you how I did it, but it's different than everybody else's. There's no real way. And I've had a similar experience where I was at CLNS. I was working full-time elsewhere. I did what I can Patriots wise. And it's sort of similar where a job just opened up and it was the right timing for, myself to get in with you guys. So, before.
And I would just say like, so when I was doing it, when I was coming out of college, the consensus was you got to go to a small market.
Mhm.
You got to go to Sterling, Colorado. I got offered a job as a morning radio host in Sterling, Colorado, right out of college. Sterling, Colorado is 4 hours east of Denver. The closest major city is Denver.
Yeah.
The 2 biggest employers in the town are the prison and the Walmart. And the Walmart's also the biggest tourist attraction. And like that's nothing. I don't mean to dump on Sterling, Colorado,
No,
but
right,
like,
but that's what it is, right?
I wasn't in a spot where I could do that at the time,
Mhm.
but that's what the path was. And everybody, no, you got to leave if you want to come back to Boston. You got to leave. And I managed to not do it. I
Right.
managed to like be able to stay. But I had a lot of friends that went to small markets, worked for some of them, didn't work for others. Some of them now work in Boston after working in small markets. But it's like that was the general thought at the time. Now there's so many more people like you with things like CLNS, Mass Live,
Yeah.
things like that can stay in Boston and have their whole career here. And that wasn't really considered a thing. We're not that different in age, but the pandemic changed a lot of that because, you didn't need to be in a real studio. You didn't need to have a real newsroom to be
Right.
legitimate. And so it creates a lot more opportunities.
Yeah. You mentioned, the digital content you do now at the Sports Hub, but you hadn't really done much writing, right? Like
Right. That was like the one thing of all the things I was doing I hadn't done.
So how did you sort of pivot to that? Like, was it a challenge? Do you enjoy writing? Like, I guess, how did you pick it up so quick? Because you sort of just had to bounce into, oh, I'm going to write XYZ for this 98.5 thesportshub.com.
Well, so, I mean, I had done a little writing, like here and there for CLNS, not a ton.
Okay.
I mean, it was like a couple things a month, but
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I read a lot, so I kind of got the idea of what it should be. I very much have my own unique style. Like you can tell I'm not a journalism major. I
Right.
was a sports media major, which wasn't even in the journalism school, the broadcasting school at Ithaca. And I mean, Matt Dolph and Ty Anderson have been tremendous, tremendous resources, kind of helping me, the finer points of journalistic style and things like that. But I would definitely say, like, I wasn't worried about. I wasn't trying to trick anybody into thinking I was a writer. I have my own unique style, my own voice. It's
Yeah.
very conversational. It's very informal, and if that's not what people like, it's not for them. I think enough people like it. And
Yeah.
I just kind of figured I'm just going to, this is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to write how I'm going to write. And if I need to change it, people will tell me. And Matt and Ty have definitely told me, hey, try this. Hey, maybe don't do that. But like, I just kind of wrote. What was in my head. And luckily enough, people felt like that worked. Honestly, that's where I will say the most writing I'd done at a job prior to that was when I worked at UMass Lowell as an SID, because I was
Okay.
writing game stories and press releases. So that's where that actually came in very helpful.
And then the play-by-play stuff, I'm curious about too, because I mean, you did so much of it, like even just what you said in the last couple minutes.
Yeah.
We've talked about it off air too, but do you still like, or first of all, how did you like? Did that take practice? Did that take time, or did you just find that naturally to be able to just sit and call a game? And do you miss it? Do you miss it? And do you think that right now you could go grab a call sheet, write something out, and just go call a game, or does that take like tedious
Ooh.
time in practice?
So honestly, like
sorry to cut you off, but that's one thing that I feel like I could absolutely like not sit and do is call an entire game. Right? Like it seems impossible.
When you do it a lot, it becomes second nature.
Yeah.
I remember this is before I knew I wanted to get into sports media. Like I'd be sitting in the outfield playing Little League baseball, and in my head, I'm doing the play-by-play. And I was the kid that would, mute the TV, watching old Patriots games and call the game myself just because I thought it was fun. I loved listening to like Gil Santos, Joe Castiglione, Jerry Trupiano back in the day, Sean Grandy, obviously Mike Gorman, tremendous, Jack Edwards, Dave Gosher. I thought that was and like to hear their names and like the highlight packages, I was like, that'd be so cool if that was me. I remember when I was calling UMass Lowell soccer, I still remember the player's name, Ivan Abramovich, game-winning bicycle kick goal in overtime, and it made the Sports Center top 10 that night, and you could hear my call. And
Cool.
obviously, I didn't accomplish anything. All the credit to him, but it was just this unbelievable feeling.
Yeah.
And then, like, when we would do, like, the end-of-year highlight packages at UMass Lowell, hearing my voice in those was cool. But, yeah, like, listening to really Gil Santos was the big one.
Yeah.
And, like, and I wanted to do football, and, like, hearing that. Do I think I could pick it up again and do it today? I do still get the itch, and I do occasionally. I think the last game I called was probably fall 2022. I had a friend who worked at Merrimack, and they needed somebody to fill in and call a game, football game, so I did that. I occasionally do Steve Buckley's charity baseball. I haven't in a few years. The schedule never works out, but that was super fun to do. Like I got to call a Pedro Martinez strikeout, which as a kid who grew up in Boston was unbelievable. Right. The Cape League was an amazing experience. I definitely still get the itch to do it. I just kind of hit a certain point where I saw guys like, Brendan Glasheen who were, because it's not that big of a community. You're doing play-by-play for all the local schools in Boston, and you get to know who all the other people are. You're calling games with them. You're on the schedule with them. And I kind of hit this point where I just felt like I was covering the Patriots, and I was like, hey, I enjoy doing this. I still think I have some ceiling here in doing talk radio and all that. I'm enjoying my podcast, and I'm hearing these other play-by-play announcers, and I'm like, I don't know that I'm going to get to that level. Okay. And that wasn't like an instant realization. That was something that happened over time. But, could I have kept doing it? And maybe, I, worked in like minor league baseball, high school, college stuff, probably. Could I go back and do it again? I think I could. If I had to call a football game today, I think I could do it. Baseball's tough. Baseball is, you got to really get in a rhythm to do baseball, which helps because it's every day.
Yeah. There's also some downtime though. Like
so I remember the first time I called a 9-inning baseball game solo on the radio on the Cape. I was like so proud. And I'd like to think I could jump back in and do it. I know it's not that easy having done it. But if you gave me like a week to prepare and call some games off the TV or whatever, I'd like to think I'd do a decent job.
Yeah. That just seems so. You do a 9-inning baseball game. Do you have to like talk to yourself? Like, is there like you doing color and play-by-play, or like what happens in downtime on a solo broadcast?
Well, so this was with the Cape League.
Yeah.
what I did, so some of that was like talking to myself. I almost like turned it into a talk show. So like we had a segment where we'd go around the major leagues every night. We'd do
Oh,
that,
nice.
I think, in like the 4th inning and 7th inning. And so it was usually me and another guy, but it was just me. So I kind of gave a little more commentary on the games and like, oh, and like, the Red Sox were good that year. The Red Sox are winning, and it's great to see so and so pitching well. Like I went a little more in depth with that. I remember I was like, hey, if anybody, let me know where you're listening from on Twitter. Like tweet at us, let us know. And so I kind of made it interactive like
Oh,
that.
nice.
It's a lot. I made it a little more like a talk show, but it was. I was spent by the end of the night. I was definitely spent by the
Yeah.
end of the night. I think I did 2 or 3 solo games there, and I did some other solo baseball games. Like I did a couple at UMass Boston. That was tough because it would be like March. It's like 20 degrees out, winds blowing, there's no offense.
Yeah.
But you got to get through it. And you find a way to get through it. You just kind of talk, and I've definitely gotten used to between podcasting. I do solo, half-hour show. I've done solo 4-hour radio shows on the Hub. One thing I've learned in this industry, you get very used to talking to yourself.
Yeah.
So
So yeah, you talk about now podcasting and radio and stuff like that. And you have found this niche in draft coverage. And so that's why I wanted to have you on this week as well, because the
yeah,
draft's coming up. This is going to air Wednesday. So really the draft is tomorrow, technically.
okay,
And you've said it how you were never really like a draft guy when you were younger, but you've turned it into this niche. And so did you, and obviously Patriots beat, whether it was Evan, whether it was myself, now with Brian, has
yeah,
sort of turned into like this go-to for not just round one draft coverage, but 7 round mocks, like 1 to 254, and the
yeah.
undrafted guys. Like, how did that come about? I'm curious about the backstory on that. And like, was Evan a draft guy, or did that just sort of like
No,
just turn it into something? Like, how did that come about? I'm curious.
Evan wasn't. I always liked. Excuse me. I always liked the draft,
Hmm.
but because I was like a big franchise guy on Madden, right? I liked building the team, so seeing that. But when I was younger, it was more see who the Patriots drafted and then look them up and get to know them, right, and read about them. And then it kind of got to a point where I was like, it would be cool to know who these guys are ahead of time. So I know, like, because I didn't know like who they passed on. Like I had no concept of
Right.
that. And I didn't really care when I was like 11, 12, 13 years old. And then I got older and I cared. And then I went to college, and in college, I became a big college football fan because my friends were, I was like, I'd watch it casually, but wasn't that in depth until, I was like 18, 19 years old.
Mhm.
Um, and then it just kind of became this natural thing where it almost wasn't a draft thing. It was I want to talk about college football thing.
Yeah.
And this was a way to kind of Trojan horse it into what I was doing. So, and then I kind of realized at the time Patriots were good. Nobody really cared about, the draft, and they were always picking in the 30s, and
Right.
nobody's really talking about the draft that way. And I didn't necessarily set out to do this on purpose. I guess I kind of did. I was like, what, I realized nobody else is talking about this. I am. And then I sort of realized that people were maybe looking for that.
Hmm.
So I started, and it sort of snowballed. I'm like, all right, people looking for this. I got to study harder. I got to learn more. All right, more people looking. I got to get more in depth. And so it really just started with me enjoying college football and just the draft process itself. And yeah, when, Evan was the big X's and O's guy, Evan was the break down the film guy when we were working together. And, I didn't just want to be overlapping with him because that doesn't do anything for me.
Right.
So, he wasn't super eager to talk about it. I mean, draft night, he would do it, but I was just trying to get ahead of the curve, I guess. And so that worked out. And then obviously I go to Sports Hub, Felger Maz Big Board
Right.
was tremendous. And yeah.
Yeah, that's turned into a different beast for sure. Now that you have the big board stuff going on,
Right. Yeah.
that's been cool to see. But and the other thing now too with Patriots beat that, like it's been, we joked about it when I left, and it was kind of a joke when, I guess when Evan left. But even in the middle, right? Evan left, and
Yeah.
you did some shows with John, you did some shows with Ryan, and it was this rotating cast, and you've sort of been the standstill on that show.
Yeah.
Can you talk about, I guess, that show, and not I guess what it means, but like, it's had so many different iterations, and then also so many different hosts, but you've been there the whole time. And I feel like that's a solid skill to have, to be able to turn the show into several different things
Yeah.
while keeping it true to what it is.
So in my mind, it goes back to when me and Evan were doing the stand-up videos together at CLNS.
Mm-hmm.
And for people who don't know, when we worked together in 2018, 2019, our content format was basically, excuse me, we would go, every day after practice or after the game, we'd go out on the field, we used like a real camera at the time. I wanted to use a phone.
Yeah.
And that just wasn't the way you did it pre-pandemic. So we had like a real TV camera. I had to lug around this cart of equipment, microphones, tripod, lights, all that. And we'd go on the field and, whatever the story of the day was, we'd shoot 3 or 4. They're supposed to be 5-minute videos. Some of them were 5 minutes. Some of them were closer to 10. And it was just me and him going back and forth. Like I was the host, but it wasn't really me interviewing him thing. It was more of a discussion where I'm just the one getting us, in and out of the video, in and out of ads, things like that. And then later on, Sierra Goodwill joined us and she filled in that role. And Maria Janos did for a little bit too. But, or actually, I don't know if I overlapped with her. But so that to me is the start of it.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have Trags hosted Patriots Beat at the time, and it was a completely different show.
Okay.
It was a weekly show where he would just interview either Patriots media or media from whoever the Patriots are playing or national media or whatever. And he would just do like a 45-minute interview.
Okay.
And I hosted it. I think once I filled in for him and it was a draft show, happened to be. And me and Evan were doing those videos. And unfortunately, 99% of them don't exist anymore because CLNS lost its YouTube channel a few years back. You can find a couple of them on other CLNS channels, or there's some on like my Instagram and Trag's Instagram, probably Sierra's. But so that was the start of it. And then when I left for the Hub, 2020, we didn't do any content together. And then when Trags left CLNS, they gave Evan Patriots Beat, and he wanted to reinvent it. And the idea to reinvent it was to bring me on because we knew we had this chemistry together. We knew we were good together. And they were originally just supposed to be 30-minute pre-recorded topic of the day shows. And I think that lasted one episode.
Was it a daily show?
No, it was once a week.
Okay.
I think it was like once a week on Mondays.
Okay.
30 minutes, touch on the big stories, pre-recorded. And I think we did one of those episodes. Okay. And I spent half of it bragging that Evan said Gunnar Olszewski would never be an NFL player, and he had just been named an All-Pro. And then we did one show, and people were like, "Oh, they're back together. That's great." And I was like, "We need to take this thing live.
Yeah,
we need to do it twice a week." I mean, when I say me and Evan were like, "This needs to be the plan." And then that's how really Patriots Beat happened. And it was just really cool because we built this audience that for a year had really wanted to see us. It wasn't a big audience, but it was very devoted, and I really appreciated that wanted to see us back together. And we were able to give them that in a much more relaxed format, a format that was much more conducive to what we wanted to do.
Yeah.
And it evolved over time. The live drafts, definitely, where everybody does the live drafts now, right? The live mock drafts. Like we were doing that.
I've taken over live shows because of my time on the show. Like it's just so much better to have that, like that community. Like you have people coming in the chat and it feels like it's like, I love the live aspect of a podcast.
Right. So that was super helpful. We started doing live mock drafts, were a huge hit. And I think it really helped us. That was the offseason they drafted Mac Jones. So it was all this build up to a quarterback, Mac Jones, Justin Fields, and the free agency too they had that year. We spent a month, the main conversation on the show, like some of the first episodes we did, and these all still exist if people want to go find them, was Jonnu Smith or Hunter Henry. Who should the Patriots sign? I wanted Hunter Henry, Evan wanted Jonnu Smith, and they signed both of them.
Yeah.
So we did that for a couple of years, and it became this real power. And then when Evan went to the Patriots, he wasn't going to be able to do it anymore. And I knew at the time I was going to join him for a show on Patriots.com. We hadn't told people because it was still being worked out, but I knew that at the time. So I was kind of back and forth on if I still want to do Patriots Beat, would there be too much overlap? But there was such response to, I hope the show continues.
Yeah.
And I'm a people pleaser. So I was like, all right, we got to keep doing this. And then we had to find a host. And obviously you were tremendous. And I think we reinvented it a little bit. And I'm glad we did. I didn't want it to be the same show me and Evan did, because you're not Evan. You're a different person. It should have a different tone. And then when you left, it was a no-brainer at that point, because I'm like, people love this. Like, because I was worried, like, is it just Evan? I was legitimately wondering, like, is Evan going to leave people are going to stop watching. People kept watching with you. And then I was like, all right, we got to keep this thing going. So Brian came in. He's been fantastic. And yeah, we'll see where it goes. I don't necessarily have any end plans for it. Brian's tremendous. I'm sure he'll leave me next. I'm sure that's coming soon. But yeah, it's been a ton of fun, and it's the best audience. It really is. It's so cool how dedicated people are to that dumb little show. And I really appreciate that.
It's the one thing, it's honestly like one of the things that I truly miss about like having to, I mean, obviously I had to make the jump to a full-time job, but leaving that show and having to not do that anymore sucked, because it really is fun. Like you said, it's, when I started it, like a nervous wreck, as you know, like it was tough. I had never done, really podcasting or live shows, but then once you get in the groove, it's like you look forward to Tuesday, Thursday nights, hopping on, having a conversation. It's not too serious, but we talk about a lot of the good stuff you have.
Yeah. I think what makes it cool is we're not beholden to any one format. So like, if we want to talk about the news of the day, we'll talk about the news of the day. If we don't, we'll go super niche, and people love that too. And it's just like, if we want to go an hour and a half, we'll go an hour and a half. If we want to go 45 minutes, we'll go 45 minutes. It really is just two guys sitting down talking Patriots. And I think that's probably the ultimate draw of it.
Yeah. How difficult has it been changing hosts over and over again? Like, I feel like that's a unique skill that, even when I have to change, like, I went from that show to, leaving for EI and doing shows. Like, it's difficult to get into a new groove with someone. How difficult has that been? Or is that something you find like comes easy to you?
I mean, it's, there's a feeling out process. I wouldn't say it comes difficult. It's definitely a feeling out process, but, obviously I'd worked with Evan a ton, so I knew him, but like we had talked, I know you, I knew Brian.
Sure.
And it was really just getting even with Ryan, it was just kind of getting the timing down, and it takes time and it takes a minute, but once you get it, you don't really think about it much. And it takes like a month, maybe that. So, it's definitely tough. And I think the toughest part is probably finding the new tone of the show, right? Where do we want this thing to go? But even when you have a host for a long time, like me and Evan, I think reinvented the show a few times in the 3 years we did it, or 2 years we did it, or whatever it is. So that's probably the hardest part.
And you've podcasted, you do radio all the time. You write, you've been a podcast guest, you go down to the station, you go to Gillette, like whatever. There's so much, right? What's your favorite part? Your ultimate favorite part of being in sports media space in general?
I mean, I think it's getting to shape the conversation.
Okay.
I think it's that, whether it's at the hub, whether it's on whatever, like kind of helping decide what people are talking about, if that makes sense. Like, I know I've been out, and this is more recent when I started with the hub, like I've been out and heard people having the same discussion that I was having on the air a few hours before. And I'm like, oh, what are you guys talking about? Like, oh, they were talking about this on the radio earlier. And like, it's in it, whatever. So kind of being a part of what's driving the narrative, being a part of what's leading the conversation, I think is super cool. Cause I mean, I just grew up as a kid talking sports, Boston sports. So getting to kind of give back to that, I think is super rewarding.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, again, you see, like we'll all grab something, I'll grab something, you got like whatever, you talk about something and it becomes the news of the day. And then if you see it like nationally on ESPN, it's like, oh, did I start this? Like, did something I said have the domino effect? Like sometimes you see that's like, oh, that's really cool. And it's obviously the best job in the world that I've said it all the time. You've said it all the time. It's like, it's a dream job to be able to talk sports every day, but it's still work, right? So what's the least favorite part? What's the one thing that like some people wouldn't know, like, oh man, this kind of stinks, I don't feel like doing this today?
I mean, the hours are tough. At the end of the day, like, you're at a game or you're on the air or whatever, so you can't really complain. But it is, it can get tough to manage. You miss things, you miss events, friends, family, whatever. I think too, it's tough. And this is more of a social media thing. I think in general, I don't think this is unique to sports media. Like, you try to make a point and it's taken as another point.
Yeah.
And you can kind of, it's tough losing control of your own words. It's, it's an interesting experience to see that happen.
Yeah.
So I don't feel like it happens a ton with me, but that's something that I know like I've gotten better about, but it used to really
Yeah.
bother me when like I would say that, like I would say A and people would interpret it as B, and I would just be like, no, it's A. And it's like, that's just the nature of the beast. That's what happens
Yeah,
sometimes.
yeah, right. No, it's tough. It happens. It happens to everyone,
Yeah.
some more than others. Sometimes you just have to like tweet a SpongeBob gif about it and let yourself move on. Um,
Right.
so before we finish up and before I give you my 5 rapid fire
Yeah.
questions that I ask everybody at the end of Behind the Mic, which I'm sure you'd be excited about one of them, which we'll get through. But
All right.
is there you've been at the sports hub for a while. You've been
Yeah.
in, obviously CLNS and Pat Speed and things like that. Is there like, what is, if you can share, like sort of the end goal? And I know you're still young, but
Yeah.
is that like, what do you think's next? Where do you want to go? Where do you want to see yourself? Like, what's next for Alex Barth in sports media?
Look, if this is what I end up doing, if I'm covering, all Boston sports, mainly the Patriots, I'm on the radio, regularly, um, I'd be incredibly happy with that. I
Yeah.
mean, when I started this, that's, if you told me that's where I ended up, I'd be like, I'm on with Felger and Maz and, I'm down at Gillette talking to players and stuff. I'd be like, that's awesome. That's great. I would like, the end goal is to just be on like a radio show, like,
Yeah.
4 hours a week, Monday to Friday. And that's my main gig. If I get there, it'd be tremendous.
Mhm.
That's like the end goal. But, I also really love what I'm doing right now. And I think a lot of, I'm very happy with where I'm at right now, but yeah, there's one more step would be cool.
Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah. That would, we've talked about it with, Felger, Maz, Evan, and Barth, Cat, like with the whole thing. Like it would just be it was funny one day. But so all right, fast 5 to finish. 5 rapid fire questions to close out episode 4 of the Behind the Mic podcast with Alex Barth. Top of mind, 5 questions. I don't know if you've seen them or not already, going through social media. But number 1, what is your favorite thing to do outside of sports?
Does golf count? I know that's kind of like a sport. I'm a big beach guy.
Okay.
And yeah, my big hobbies are only things you can do in the summer
Okay.
because that's not football season.
Right.
I just like to go. I'll leave my phone at home, honestly, just to disconnect. I'll go sit on the beach, hang out, a couple friends, hang out with family, just relax, listen to music, whatever. I know that sounds kind of lame, but
do you have the itch to reach for your phone when you leave it at home during a beach day? Because I cannot leave my phone for 5 minutes.
Most of the time I don't. It happens occasionally. So like I remember when I first started at the hub, I went I the house was within walking distance of the beach.
Mhm.
So I left my phone at the house. I went down to the beach. I came back to use the bathroom and I checked my phone, and I like 2 hours ago somebody had asked me like, "Hey, can you do a hit on the sports hub?"
Wow.
And I wasn't on regularly at the time, and I was like, "Oh
Mhm.
my god, I can't believe I missed that." So, a little bit,
Yeah.
but it's like if it's a day where I think I'll need it, I'll bring it.
Yeah.
But if it's like the middle of summer and I'll tell people like, "Hey, I'm out for a few hours," like it's so nice. It's
Yeah.
so nice. And I have a little backup. It's an old phone that I essentially just use as an iPod shuffle that I bring for music. So
Oh, there you go.
it's not like I'm down there, without it. Although I do like to bring the old school radio down too. That
Yeah.
can be the move
Yeah,
sometimes.
definitely. All right. Number 2, most memorable moment so far working in sports media for you.
Oh, I mean, covered a Super Bowl, covered
Yeah.
the Patriots winning a Super Bowl, covered Tom Brady winning a Super Bowl. That's going to be tough to top. That's going to be real tough to top. Was there the whole week, went down Sunday, did, media night Monday, covered Patriots practice, did the Hall of Fame ceremony Saturday. That was the year Ty Law got inducted, covered the game. Just an unbelievable experience. Literally like lived out a childhood dream. So and even if I get to cover another one, it won't be the first one. So, and it won't be
Yeah,
Tom
I
Brady.
still got to get there. You're lucky.
Probably won't be Tom Brady. So, yeah, it's got to be that.
Yeah. What is the number 3 best advice you've received working in sports media?
Okay, so I'll give you two. They're from the same person. His name was Barry Sachs. He was the original executive producer of Sports Center.
Okay.
And he was an Ithaca grad, so I got connected with him. He's actually the reason I went to Ithaca. I got connected to him through Jimmy Young, and tremendous guy. Passed away last year. Sad. He was working at Quinnipiac. A lot of people, coming out of Quinnipiac knew him, but two things he told me were, again, just that, right place, right time. The more places you are, the better. And this is what I still think about all the time. You don't need everybody to like what you do. And odds are not everybody will like what you do. You just need that one person to take a chance on you, right? You can get rejected from 20 jobs. If one hiring manager likes your stuff, you don't need all 21 of the hiring managers to like it, just one. So that's, and I think that applies in other ways too. Like no media members universally liked.
Right.
Because there's different people who want different style of content. So you just have to find your audience. And if your audience isn't 100% of the population, like that's okay. That's totally fine. That I think about that a lot.
Yeah. Number 4, what would you be doing if you didn't work in sports media?
I think I'd be a teacher.
Okay.
Probably.
Kind of teacher.
Either a gym teacher, just because I wasn't very good in school,
Okay.
or a history teacher, because that was my favorite subject. Probably be like, go teach high school, volunteer, coach, football, basketball, baseball, whatever. I got a bunch of teachers in my family. I like public speaking, and I feel like that's a tool I should use because not everybody has that.
Yeah.
So probably be a teacher.
I was just going to ask you something on the teacher thing, but we'll move on to number 5 because we talk about it, we text about it. It's on Twitter. Alex Barth, what is your favorite pizza topping?
Hamburger pizza.
Okay.
Especially if it's like not even hamburger, like ground beef, when it's like the shredded.
Oh yeah.
In Town Spa, obviously, is tremendous.
Yep.
I haven't been in years. I heard it changed, but back in the day, Pizza Market in Sharon, it's great hamburger pizza. And there was this place up in Ithaca that did pizza subs. So they would do like a sub, like a big sub roll, but the bread was garlic bread, and they'd melt cheese with sauce, and then whatever you wanted to get on it. So I'd usually get ground beef or bacon. You could only eat one of them about every 6 months, or you'd go in a coma.
Yeah.
But Shortstop Deli in Ithaca, unbelievable. And I used to joke that was my favorite pizza.
A pizza sub. Yeah, that's good. Okay.
Yeah.
Are you a pickle pizza fan? Would you try the pickle pizza?
No.
Do you like
pickles? I like
pickles,
but
you gotta try.
I really only like pickles like on the side of like a sandwich or a hamburger. Like I don't really put them on anything, but I'll eat them on the side.
A hamburger pizza, not like I know like hamburger, like ground beef pizza, but they'll also do like a hamburger pizza with like ketchup, mustard, like that kind of stuff.
Would you like a Big Mac pizza?
Yeah,
that's fine.
Okay.
I just like the ground beef.
Yeah,
ground beef pizza, maybe like some onion on there. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't need ketchup on the pizza. Like there's tomato sauce.
Yeah, that's fair. All right. Well, that's going to do it for episode 4 of the Behind the Mic podcast. Alex, maybe once we leave our respective radio stations, we can join each other again on air. But thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it. You've been instrumental in my journey into this field. So to kind of hear your background, your story, super cool. And I'm sure that a lot of fans and everyone watching will too. So thanks for joining me. You can follow the Behind the Mic podcast on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube at Behind Mic Pod. Subscribe wherever you got your podcast. And until next time, thanks for watching, and we will see you next time.